Welcome, welcome. Okay, so today, so I'm Tiffany. I'm going to talk with Cassandra here today. We're going to have a chat about imposter syndrome for Black women and overcoming your trauma to really get over your imposter syndrome. I'll let her introduce herself and talk a little bit about her amazing work. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Hey there, everyone. I'm Casandra Austin-McDonald, a feminine embodiment mentor for accomplished spiritual and high achieving women, leaders, and visionaries, supporting you to unveil your essence so that you are leading more powerfully and experiencing better relationships. And I'm really excited about this conversation we're going to have today.
Awesome, awesome. And yes, experiencing better relationships is a great point because first you have to start with yourself and the
That part.
relationship that you have. And I know
Yeah.
we talked about that a little bit. So, let's start off from the top. Tell me about how you got into this work and what your mission and your goal is with what it is that you do.
Yes. So I actually had a former career working with juvenile and adult offenders in the
Mm,
criminal justice field. And at the time, I worked in both group settings and with individuals who were court ordered to my caseload because they had committed a criminal offense due to either a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, mental health challenges, or behavioral challenges. And during the time, we were using what a lot of therapeutic modalities were more of the cognitive based. And I just had this
mhm,
intuition that something was missing. And with a lot of them had traumatic backgrounds and the root cause wasn't being addressed. It was more so the symptom or the behavior or whatever version of themselves was showing up, but no one was really going deeper into the trauma. So
mm,
that eventually started my own curiosities into my own life because I had a very traumatic childhood. And I had one of my clients ask me, how did I forgive? And I couldn't really answer that question. So I defaulted
That's a big
at the time.
one.
Yeah, and I said, "Well, we're not here to talk about me today. We're here to talk about you."
Oh no, not the mirror. Okay.
But I took it back home,
Mm,
and I thought, wow, I've been professionally trained, educated, have a formal education, all these credentials, and yet I couldn't answer this simple question. That's where this embodiment piece came in for me about not just having an education, not just being credentialed or having professional background, but am I really walking the talk? And I started doing my trauma work.
oh
So
my
this is
gosh.
a really long time ago when trauma work was not even a popular thing. And from there, I had such powerful realizations, transformations. I was letting go of old, harmful, misaligned relationships, and I was addressing my own misaligned, self sabotaging patterns inside of relationships and even professionally that were holding me back from going to the next level of my own ambitions and successes. And I felt inspired to start hosting these trauma informed workshops and seminars. So I would go
Mhm.
around and inform the community around trauma and why emotional healing, spiritual healing, addressing mental health was really important. And from there, it just continued to unfold where I entered the coaching industry, then personal development, and it's just continued to unfold from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just like you mentioned how so much of like the sciences like therapy and psychiatry, it just focuses on like theory, and there is so much deeper that we can go into when it comes to trauma work. And I
Mhm.
think when you do it for yourself, when you're helping others, it just allows you to meet people where they are. And if you're meet people much deeper because you're able to meet yourself at a much deeper level. So
Exactly.
I love that you've done that. We need more people like that that are showcasing their own experiences, not just something that you read in a book, but you've actually done the hard work. And it's not very easy work to address, but what are some maybe specific ways that you feel that diving deeper into your traumas has helped you specifically when it came to your career or interpersonal relationships, anything that you would like to share?
Oh, it radically transformed every area of my life.
Yeah.
Every area of my life,
Yeah.
beginning with my own relationship with myself, looking at
Yeah.
what were my own habits and patterns and self-sabotaging ways of being that were coming from feeling not enough or feeling unworthy or comparing myself to other people, and really
Mhm.
working through that, addressing that, and looking at why was I constantly choosing the same type of person with a different name and a different face in my relationships and in my friendships, and
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
looking at why was I so high achieving? Why was I so ambitious? And really had to do some identity work around that, some self-worth work around, why am I so driven, ambitious, high achieving? And discovered that a lot of that came from trauma.
Yeah.
And
Who would have
I
thought?
stripped my identity down to the bones, and it transformed every area of my life. I met my husband a decade ago. Uh, I was a single mom when I started this path. I got pregnant with my son when I was 19 in college, and now he's a senior in college and
Wow.
driving. Relocated across the country 5 years ago and resigned from my former 9 to 5, and have been growing my own mentorship brand, personal brand, so that I'm supporting fellow accomplished spiritual and high achieving women in a really deep, profound capacity, and have walked with women to co-create some extraordinary miracles in their lives, their relationships, and their careers and businesses. And it's been such an extraordinary experience, because I realized that, like you said, the deeper I could go with myself, the deeper I was able to go with others. And that's how we've been able to all experience these
Mhm.
amazing transformations that a lot of people read about in personal growth and development books, but some of them don't even really touch. And a lot of that is
Mhm.
because they're unwilling to go deeper. They're
Yeah.
unwilling to go beneath the surface. A lot of people just look at personal growth and development of, let's chase the shiny object,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
chase the
It's
ring,
scary.
let's chase the money, let's chase the titles.
Yeah.
But there's this work is about depth. It's about self actualization. It's about unleashing your potential. It's about coming home to your true self and really examining, why do you do what you do? Are you doing this because you're looking for validation, for approval? Or are you doing this because you feel led by God? And those are
Yeah.
two different ways to approach your life.
Oh my gosh, that's a big one. That's a big one. And I want to come back to some things, but I also want to share some of my example or some of my stories, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about my career experience. And I've been a career coach for over a decade, and I started out just helping a broad population of people, but I would see these comparisons between women, between the intersections of Black women and women of color, and how that compares and drastically differs from white men who just have this sense of entitlement. But it's so much deeper than that when it comes to working with women of color who have experienced so many different things. That yes, I'm helping them with their resume or their career transition, but there's oftentimes so many things deeper that I recognize. And just like you said, like I see that in myself. I'm like, oh, I'm working with a woman now who doesn't want to go for this next thing because she doesn't think she can. And then meanwhile, I was in that same position too, where I was terrified. I'm like, this is, this mirror is too clear. It was hard to kind of see that and recognize it within myself. And I
Yeah.
think one of the big things in overcoming that is just being comfortable with the fear and the scary steps that it takes.
Mhm.
So yeah, I resonate so heavily with some of the things you're saying. I see it often. And maybe I do kind of want to take a little bit of a side step and talk a little bit about that, because I do think a lot of women run into the wall when they're trying to address their trauma, and like they run into the wall that is fear. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how to get past that and how to work through fear as you're trying to overcome your traumas, trying to create the best life for yourself? What does that look like?
Well, there's different angles we can take to approach this when it comes to fear, because
Mhm.
sometimes fear can be coming from a place of this is new, this is foreign, I've never done this before, and naturally we feel fear. But
Mhm.
sometimes fear can come up as a trauma response, and our nervous system is wired for safety to keep us protected and safe. And so, if you are going to, say, for instance, embark on a new endeavor, and the story you're creating in your mind about this new endeavor, you're maybe starting to have some connections to the past. Maybe you had a bad experience before, maybe you had an unresolved traumatic experience before, and now you're having these unconscious memories surface and your nervous system is feeling activated. That can produce some level of anxiety. And so now we have to look at, if I'm feeling anxious and I'm feeling fear about this new thing, is this because I have an experience in the past that I didn't fully experience?
Mm.
This could be a combination of old stuff coming up and what's present. And so for me, it's really important to make sure that people are not doing what's called bypassing, meaning you'll hear people say, just take action, just do the scary thing. But if you are
Yeah,
in a trauma response
I
and you
hear that
try
a lot.
to just take action and just do the scary thing, this is where self sabotage happens, because you can take action, you
Mm.
okay.
Welcome back.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think we're good. I wish we could pause live, but we only missed a few, like maybe 30 seconds.
Okay.
Feel free
Okay, good
to
deal.
jump right back. You were talking about doing the scary thing because a lot of times
Yes,
people tell you to just push past fear. And I
yes,
felt that to my core because that is oftentimes the message, right? They're like, oh, just
yeah,
do it. And that can be helpful. It can, but
yeah.
so I'll let you continue your thought.
Well, and for me, this is where I like to combine. So a part of my work is I bring in different somatic alchemy approaches, which means
Oh.
I bring approaches that help to calm the breath, regulate the nervous system, uh, keep you in a better state of homeostasis so that when you go do the scary thing, your body's
Mhm.
not in flight or fight. thinking that bears, lions, and tigers, oh my, are hunting you down.
Yeah. That's a scary feeling. It's like, I'm just trying to send an email, like, why is my heart racing?
Yeah. And so that's where the
Yes.
tools and approaches I bring in are so important, because if we are bringing your body back down to a state of homeostasis and bringing back peace and ease into your
Mhm.
body, bringing this sense of confidence, knowing that no matter what, I'm going to be okay, and aligning the mindset to that, then when you do the scary thing, you're less likely to self sabotage.
Mhm.
And
And that
so,
alone is gold.
well, yeah, because we
Yeah.
self sabotages, in my humble opinion, is one of the number one reasons why people are not experiencing everything they've ever wanted.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
they sabotage it because deep down they don't feel worthy, they don't feel good
Mhm.
enough. They compare themselves to other people, and over time, even if they do get the opportunity or they do get the success or they do make the money, they end up sabotaging it because their core beliefs were not in alignment with that. And that's why I believe
Exactly.
inner work is so important. And we can't just do all the action. And so I have this saying that
Yeah.
I've been known to say, that you can't outwork your inner self.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, yes, yes. The work has to start from within. You have to create
Mhm.
that space too within yourself. That's how I think about it. I visualize like the space inside. Like I'm going inside myself and I'm clearing out like that SpongeBob meme where like all the files and everything is burning. You have to
Yes,
like organize and clean up and expand. And then you can sit and be like, okay, now I can welcome in the things that I actually want.
exactly. Then you're ready.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. I love it. Okay. I'm just looking at some of the questions I had so we can stay on topic. Um, I want to talk also about the role of community in this reflection, like what you've seen, maybe hopes and goals that you have for your mission and helping more Black women achieve the lives that they want, or
Yeah,
helping more women.
community is important. And what I have found is, I like to say BIPOC women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, because I tend to serve
Yes.
women who come from multiple cultural backgrounds. But I find that we all have very similar experiences.
Mhm.
And one thing that I find is we're more likely to isolate when we think we're alone. And a big reason why we think we're alone is because we either come from families who may have been a little bit dysfunctional. And so we were the black sheep, or we were the scapegoat, or we were the one that was the eldest daughter and was the truth teller, and people didn't like that. She was like, raise my hand. She's like, she's
That
coming
might be me. That might be me. Oh no. Jamaican oldest daughter.
Yes, we're
It's
natural born leaders.
yeah.
And so we're the strong friend. And so usually what
Mhm.
happens is the grace we give is not always the grace we receive.
Yeah.
And what can
Yeah.
happen over time is you can generate this narrative in your mind that you're alone, that no one understands you, that you often feel misunderstood, which can cause isolation. And so,
Mhm.
first, what I would say, it's important to know that no, you're not alone. We're all over the place. It's how do we all come together, which is part of the community I'm building, is more of us firstborn daughters, natural leaders, those
Yes.
of us who are the strong friend, who have missions, who have callings, coming together and co-creating together and knowing we're not alone. So one
Exactly.
thing that I'm really big on is having safe spaces.
Mhm.
And for me, a safe space starts with self. Do you feel safe with yourself? Because before you can feel safe with another, or before another can feel safe with you have to feel safe with you. And so when we can feel safe within our own being, then we bring that safety inside of the room. And that's how we start to create safe communities where people feel heard, people feel seen, people feel supported. And when we feel held, seen, heard, and supported, we can thrive. And
Exactly.
in
Yes.
that thriving state is how we're going to create a new world. That's how we're going to be inspired, energized, motivated to create these missions. I believe God's given a lot of us to create, where we're
Yeah.
changing
Yeah.
policies, we're changing systems, we're changing the way things have been done. But it takes energy to do that. It takes
Yes.
vitality to do that.
Yeah.
And to do that, we need to be in community with each other so that we can feel connected. But another reason is because a part of imposter syndrome, which is why I know we're having this conversation, is when self-doubt comes in.
Mhm.
And if you have people in community who know who you really are, they know your true essence, they know your strengths, they know what's in you. You can go back and ask them, I'm having a moment. Can you mirror back to me who I am? Because I'm having a
Yeah.
moment of.
Yes, yes. I totally relate to that. Especially in the past few years, I feel like I've built really beautiful relationships with people that will tell me the truth. Like, I'm experiencing this issue, and they'll be like, "Well, actually, you're not really showing up in the way that you should be." It's like, ouch, but like you need that for growth. And that's one of the things that community can provide, truly. So I love that. And another one of my core beliefs that I think I've built recently too is the idea that if you have a goal and a mission in life, that it's not just like an individual thing. Like, yes, it is individual and that you should pursue it, but also that it's almost like the community, the collective is dreaming, is wanting you to pursue that. So
Mhm.
never think that you should just do it selfishly. Like, I think the gifts that we have and the things we want to share are going to be of service because other people need that thing that you have to offer, that which you need
Yeah,
to pursue, right? So there's this
absolutely.
great balance that we might not see that community can help us to resolve and find.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I love that. I love everything that you're saying. Um, I have like a lot of questions that I could ask you, but I want to dive further into um, maybe some of the recent people that you've worked with, or examples of how
Yeah.
you've helped people work through using some of these strategies, and any examples. I know that you could probably talk a lot about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one that comes to mind is an entrepreneur that I was working with. She is a wife, a
Mhm.
mother, an entrepreneur, owns multiple businesses. And she came to me because she was experiencing what I call the domino effect, meaning one thing happened and then another and then another and then another. And
Okay.
before she knew it, marriage wasn't great, family wasn't great, business wasn't great. And she realized she was the common denominator, that she was the woman standing behind everything. And
Yeah.
her option to blame things outside of herself had ended. So she had to come face to face with the woman in the mirror. And imposter syndrome, self-doubt,
Mhm.
comparisonitis, comparing herself to her competitors
Yeah.
was coming up.
Yeah.
And one of the approaches that I used was the somatic alchemy that I talked about. Breath work is one of the modalities that I use inside of my work. So we did some breath work, and it supported her to not only regulate her nervous system, but then to get her brain out of that flight or fight response that was
Mhm.
causing her to kind of like scramble around and comparing herself and, oh, I got to come up with the next idea to make a sale or to make my
Yeah.
business revenue goals. And instead, we got her into this really beautiful, calm state, regulated state, bringing her body back into homeostasis. And she repaired her marriage. She
Mm.
restored the
Okay.
relationship with her kids, and she had a $32,000 day in her business.
Wow, amazing. Look at that. And it's crazy because sometimes we do think it is like all of these other things except when we look in and it's like, wait. Wait, I
Yeah.
just need to, because
And she
again,
did
that is
what a lot
hard.
of women that come to me do. She had hired
Yeah.
all the strategists. She was going through
Mm,
ads. She was like, maybe I need to hire this person to tell me how to strategize things in my business. And what I like to tell women is when you find yourself going outside of yourself for answers, you're hiring strategists, you're hiring ads people, you're hiring this consultant,
mm,
that consultant, and you haven't gone deeper into your inner work. I would encourage you to go deeper into your inner work first before
mm.
going outside of yourself looking for all of these shiny object syndromes, which I call it, because the answers really are within. We have
Yeah.
so we have a well of wisdom
Right.
within us. When she had that $32,000 day in her business, it was because she was in such a beautiful, calm state. Her joy came back, her creativity came
Yeah.
back. was on a walk one day with her daughter and she had this brilliant idea, executed the idea, and that's what gave her the money, not the
Yeah.
ad
Yeah.
specialist, not the strategist. It was her own creativity.
Exactly. Because we're all amazing. We all have
Yeah.
everything we need inside. Yes, that's amazing, and I love that, and I recognized it in small ways, and I know that I also need to work on, like, regulating my nervous system more and all of these things, but I recognize such a huge change within myself, within some of my clients, that, like, when you do take a mirror and look back at, like, what it is that what it is that's within, and it's always like that, it's an idea that you've already had. Maybe you just don't know the way that you're gonna do it. Maybe you don't know the how. Maybe you don't know who could help you actually accomplish it, but a lot of times the answers are already within. So I do love that example. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
One of the in wrapping up here, um, one of the last things I want to talk about is um, maybe some misconceptions that people have about this journey, to kind of simplify it for people that like are hearing what we're saying and they're maybe like feeling like, yeah, I really resonate. But what are some misconceptions? What are some things that you think, it seems like a journey or seems like a burden, but it isn't actually in actually taking that next step, if that makes sense.
And are you saying in regards to the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, like in overcoming imposter syndrome, addressing your traumas,
Yeah.
outside of the fear, like, this looks like a wall, but it's really a door kind of thing. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly. Exactly. Well, what I like to tell people is, for one, don't approach it like something is wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. This is more of a process of unlearning rather than it is learning something new.
Mhm.
And we're conditioned and trained through society, especially here in the Western world, that our intellect comes from reading more books, learning more things. And the type of work that I do is more about unlearning. It's about unlearning who people told you who to be. It's about unlearning patterns, conditioning, programming, behaviors that are covering up your true self. And it's a homecoming of coming back home to yourself. And this authentic version of yourself is the gold mine. This is
Mhm.
where creativity is. This is where the intuition is. You know, a lot of women struggle with trusting themselves, and self trust is how people create success. Self trust is how people create thriving relationships where their programming and conditioning is not choosing the partner, it's the true self, the self trust.
Yeah.
Self trust is how you can lead in a really powerful way, because you get an
Yeah.
intuition about something and you follow it and you trust it. Self trust is how we use our voice to create change in the world, because we may notice that people aren't speaking to a particular topic or a particular area that we realize is important. And self trust is how we speak to those things. And so this is really about returning home to your authentic self. And what I
Mhm.
invite people to do is to release these labels. Stop calling yourself, labeling yourself with imposter syndrome, and instead
Yeah. Ooh.
identify what is the internal experience you're having. What are the thoughts you're thinking? What are the feelings you're feeling? And how are those driving your behavior? Because when you can do that, you can reduce shame from the labels. When we label ourselves, we start to feel shame. We start to feel bad about ourselves. We start to think something's wrong with us. We pathologize
Yeah.
ourselves. That's what this Western world does. But
Yeah.
instead, to simplify it, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? And how is that driving your behavior? And is that the direction you want to go in? And then notice where you get to give yourself some grace and course correct. Think of it like taking a road trip, and maybe you were jamming out to some music with your friends and you didn't hear when the GPS went off and said make a left turn. You
Mm.
kept on
Yeah, yeah,
driving.
yeah. Because 'Cause you're not
All
listening
you
to
gotta do is
yourself.
stop and turn around and
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
U-turn.
That's
It's not a
so
big deal. Like, it's not the end of the world. It's gonna be okay.
Yes, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Yes, I think that's too something I tell myself. But
Yeah.
heavy on learning, and as well as just recognizing, I guess, peeling away what isn't yourself, because when you are more true to yourself, things just align. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think too, not focusing so much on imposter syndrome, because it's not like that. I think that also makes people feel shameful. Like, oh no,
Yes.
now it's another label that I have. Like I have
Yeah.
all this trauma and I have imposter syndrome. But it's really just, it doesn't have to be so complex, so complicated. It can really just be, well, how can I listen to myself and what I actually feel?
Yeah.
So
And I'm big on
beautiful.
understanding the history of things. And
Mhm.
the history of imposter syndrome is fairly recent. In 1978, two psychologists developed this phrase of um, intellectual phoniness. And they noticed that it
Okay.
was coming from their high achieving clients who were women. And we have to consider context when we're looking at these labels, because during this time, there were certain things that were not considered, like racism, classism,
Mm,
social. So, as BIPOC women, we have to be mindful of labels that we're taking on and putting over ourselves, and make sure that that doesn't belong to us, because we have to keep in mind, what's the root? Where did this come from? Well, two white psychologists who probably were serving a lot of white
yeah.
women during a time fairly after the feminist movement, where women were allowed to work, women were allowed to make their own money, and they're in dynamics with men who probably didn't want them there. So we got to consider the context and
Mhm.
look at, why am I calling myself this? Where did this come from? Is this actually true for me? Or am I just saying this about myself because I've heard it redundantly repeated over and over and over again? And so that's
Mhm.
why I invite people to just go back to simplifying, what are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the behaviors? And is it in alignment with the direction that I want to go in?
Wow, wow. That's so powerful and amazing because yeah. So I have a special interest in psycholinguistics, and I do think that all of these words, like, we do have to question, what are the words that we're thinking? How are we
Yeah,
speaking to ourselves? And yes, that's, truer words couldn't have been said. Thank you so much for sharing.
of
Uh,
course.
um, so in wrapping up, tell us how, if people want to get in touch with you, to work with you, to have a $32,000 day, or just to really unpack, like, unpack all of this stuff, start this
Yeah.
community. How can people get in touch with you and work closely with you?
Yeah. So I believe on your description, you'll have a link to my
Mhm.
website. So if you go
Yes.
there, and I invite you to join me in my exclusive email community. That is where people are first to know of when I have upcoming live mentorship spaces, programs, virtual and live in person events. And
Okay.
then also, there's an application on my page to apply for mentorship. And so if you realize that you would like to work with me, then I have an application process. And if I feel like it's a good fit, then we would continue on with a consultation call and go from there. And then I also have a on demand master course that I think would be really valuable to your community, which is called Reclaim Your Voice and Speak Your Uncensored Truth. And this is a 5 module on demand training where I talk about the neurobiology of women and our voices, and how it's connected to even different traumas like sexual violations, and how that could cause women to not speak their truth because
Mhm.
there is somatically trauma still stored in the body. So it's a really powerful training that I had women in their 40s, 50s saying, why didn't we learn this stuff from years
Wow.
ago? Why is no one teaching us this stuff?
You're
So
teaching. That's you.
exactly, I'm the one. It's really powerful though. So I'll make sure to
Yes.
provide a link so that Tiffany can share it with your community.
Thank
And
you
then I
so
have a
much.
free Facebook group, Unapologetically Magnetic Woman,
Okay.
and
I
you
can
can
find
join me
that
there.
and add it to the description as well.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And add any questions or comments to the chat if you want to learn more. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Ooh.